My name is David Ford, and I'd like to introduce my long-term colleague, Kimani Augustine. Kimani Augustine is a senior project manager in our diagnostics group with more than 16 years of experience in enclosure consulting and forensic engineering. He routinely oversees field visits and assessments of existing structures requiring restoration, retrofit, and or renovation. He serves as a project manager on building envelope and restoration projects for commercial, institutional, healthcare, higher education, and governmental clients, where he delivers innovative solutions to often uniquely challenging existing design conditions. He has also managed several high-profile building enclosure renovation projects involving rope access and building facade maintenance unit assessments, certification, and retrofits. Kimani is a leader in our enclosure diagnostics practice that is dedicated to developing step-by-step processes for finding solutions to building envelope issues. He is on the board of the Gulf Coast chapter of the International Institute of Building Enclosure Consultants, where he actively serves in enhancing building enclosure knowledge in the Houston area.
As David mentioned, my name is Kimani Augustine. I am a senior project manager with Walter P. Moore in our diagnosis group in our Houston office. Today, I'm going to be presenting to you on the responsibilities involved in facade access and maintenance systems. Specifically, we'll be going through the 2017 rules updates to the OSHA's working services standards for Subpart D and Subpart I, and we'll be focused on the facade access and maintenance systems, or FAM systems, portions of those standards, as well as fixed standards in our discussions today. At the end of the presentation, we'll be discussing the responsibilities of the building owners, employers, and workers who are involved in the use of the systems. To get going, I wanted to illustrate with a video the importance of the OSHA regulations. This video is taken from October 2019, where a swing stage broke loose on a facade access project, and one of the workers was actually left dangling. Those OSHA rules were first implemented back in 1971. And over the time, they've been updated every so often, but those updates really haven't kept pace with the progress of technology and the increases in industry best practices. And so in 2017, OSHA implemented a rule update to bring the old standards in line with current industry standards and technologies. Those updates also meant to sort of harmonize the construction standard with the general industry standard to sort of streamline the regulatory burden on owners and businesses. Also provided some updates to the requirements for personal fall protection systems intended to essentially ensure that everyone is following the same rules. And one additional item that was mandated in this update was the requirement for rescue procedures. Previously to that update, the rescue procedures was referencing consensus standards through OSHA's general duty clause, but wasn't actually directly addressed in the OSHA regs. And in this video, taken from that video, you can see the emergency rescue folks coming and to retrieve this guy from that platform. Another key update for this item was to the requirement for businesses to ensure that their facade access systems were properly certified and inspected by an engineer or qualified person. So wanted to give a quick synopsis on some of the whats, wheres, and whens of this rule updates from 2017 from OSHA. So if you may not be fully cognizant of what those are, if they apply to your businesses, are you following them? Are you keeping in regulatory compliance with these requirements? So we'll go through a few key updates, and we'll start with the facade access and maintenance systems. Several of you may use a MooreExpert or what's more technically referred to as a rope descent system for window washing your buildings. What you may not know is that there's really a height limit for when you can use these systems. And prior to 2017, this height limit wasn't directly referenced in OSHA. It was called out in industry consensus standards. But in 2017, OSHA codified this to be maximum 300-foot height. So if you have a building and you're performing the window washing or the building maintenance, and your building is above 300 feet, you should not use a MooreExpert. Some key dates for those rule updates in reference to FAM systems. From May 17th, 2017, OSHA basically placed a greater onus on building owners or employers to ensure that all exposed workers are trained in fall hazards, to recognize fall hazards. It's really important that a worker or user in an FAM system understands when they may be exposed to danger, and that training is not required. In addition to that, though, it's also critical that those users understand and are trained in the designed use of these systems. And we'll discuss this a bit further on. Another key date from the 2017 rule updates from OSHA is the requirements for employers or business building owners to ensure that their systems are inspected and certified by a qualified person. By definition, a qualified person is a licensed engineer. Why this is important is prior to 2017, OSHA, this wasn't directly required by OSHA. It was referencing consensus standards, but now it's a direct requirement in the OSHA regs. On the next slide, we're going to go through some rule changes for fixed ladders. I'm sure that several of you have seen fixed ladders where there's a cage. And in that cage, you climb up, and if you need to rest, you can sort of lean back and rest yourself against the cage. Those are going away, but OSHA is doing so in a phased manner. And the intent here is any ladder greater than 24 feet from November 18th, 2019, you need to ensure that those ladders have an OSHA-approved cage, well, personal fall rest of ladder safety system. Ladder safety system is where you have like a tie back with a lanyard and a vertical lifeline system or something similar to that. So if you have fixed ladders, those need to be retrofitted. If you have a new ladder, though, you're no longer allowed to use cages or wells. You have to use a ladder safety or personal fall protection system. This takes me to my next slide. I mentioned that those changes are being phased out. And so 15 years from now, in 2036, cages all of those need to go away. And those need to be replaced with a personal fall safety system, similar to this slide, where you see a vertical lifeline with a harness and a traveler attached back to the person's body. The intent is for ladders is if someone falls, you want to make sure that if they were to fall, that their fall is arrested before they hit the lower platform. So we've kind of gone through some of the key updates. We kind of have to ask ourselves, well, who's responsible? We have a puzzle, we have different pieces. Who's exactly is responsible for all of these pieces coming together to create a safe environment for workers? Well, the answer is we're all responsible. It's a shared responsibility from the building owner to the employer, to the contractor. Some building owners, they hire third-party vendors to do this work. Everyone has a part to play. And it sort of follows this cog, this five-spoke cog of safety. Starts with certification of the systems, inspections, written procedures, if needed, a written plan of service, and trained users. Going through those for owners, and then I'll go through those as well for contractors. If you're an owner, it's really important that you ensure that your systems are certified before you allow anyone onto your building. If there were an event, OSHA is going to want to receive your documentation that your systems are being inspected and certified by an engineer. On the next cog for inspections, for most fall FAM systems like DABs and tiebacks that requires an annual visual inspection, followed by not to exceed 10-year recertification that's a bit more comprehensive. Usually that involves a pull test or load test of your systems. 10 years is the max. However, if the design engineer says it's 5 years, you need to stick to 5 years. And those inspections should be provided to anyone that's going to go on your buildings. The next item on here is written procedures. It's really critical that you have systems that are installed, certified, and inspected, but there's a manual as to how to use the systems. What's the maximum wind speed? What's the coverage zones? Is there a rescue plan? How do you get to the systems? All of those should be addressed in the written manual so that they're done safely and in accordance with the design intent, and sort of creates a baseline roadmap as to how to use the systems in a safe manner. However, not every single scenario will be covered under your baseline written procedures. And so if you have a contractor who's coming to your building whose scope falls outside of those baseline written procedures, you should ensure that they provide you with a written plan of service as to how they're going to perform the work in a safe manner, using the systems that you have in place or supplementing those to ensure that the work is done safely. And then finally, you should receive written documentation that the workers performing that work that they're trained. They're trained in the use of your system. They're trained in the OSHA regulations, and that they are familiar with the safety protocols that need to be followed. From the contractor side, if you're a third-party contractor, you should always request the certification documents from a building owner before you get in the building. Ensure that they're certified. There's some systems out there that haven't been certified in 5 years. Who knows what took place? Are they still in good shape? On the inspection side of the wheel, it is your responsibility, at least every 8 hours or before every work shift, that you re-inspect those yourselves, perform visual inspections. Are they damaged? You left work at 4 p.m. the previous day, you come to work at 8 a.m. the next day. Did something happen in that time frame that could cause those systems to not be suitable for use? Request the written procedures, guys. Ensure that you have received those, if you reviewed them, and that you know how they're designed to be used, they're intended to be used. Try not to, do not go away from the design intent. If you're going to do so, verify with the designer that it's acceptable. And if your written procedures provided by the owner are not quite up to the scope that you're planning to do, then you will need to write a separate written plan of service as to how to take care of this as well. And then finally, ensure that your workers are trained. You don't want anyone being on your buildings if they're not trained. It's important that everyone get written documentation for the scopes. The owner should request and provide written documentation for certification, and receive from the contractors that they've reviewed those documents and are going to comply with them, and vice versa for the contractors. So this is the end of the presentation for today. I believe that there's a few questions in the lobby, and we'll go through the open discussion and question round right now.
Kimani, I had a question for you. We often deal with owners that recently take over a building, and they don't have the history of the facade access anchors, and they don't know if they've been certified, but they do want to do work on their facades, restoration and cleaning work. What's the process they need to use to determine if those anchors are certified and usable?
Yeah, David, that's a very good question. We come across this situation very often, and the very first question we have is, do you have drawings from when they were installed? And also, not only the drawings, but do you have, hopefully somewhere in the archives, maybe you have some documents where they were previously certified. And if you do, then it's relatively simple. You do a visual, and if needed, if the 5 to 10 year period for the more comprehensive certification has expired, then you may also need to do a load test. If you don't have those drawings, unfortunately, that can become a bit more complicated. And that may involve some further investigation as to what was installed, You can just load test them and see if they pass. But it's very important to understand not just systems that you have, but how they intended to be used. And if you don't have written procedures for those, it's probably worthwhile to consider developing those so that going forward, they can be used safely. All right, so the next question that we have is, I have seen when the washers attach a cable around a rooftop mechanical equipment curb for use of a boatman's chair. Is this allowed? A qualified person can make a judgment on that. But you are sort of subjecting the users to one-off type of points. And it's really important that you consider having a permanent system that's been designed, certified for use in this application. Not just for strength, but for coverage. There's that curb, if it's more than 50 feet setback from the roof, you could result in a situation where there's an extended angular swing of the rope that could subject the person to extended movement while on the stage. And similar to that video I showed earlier, if that stage swings excessively and basically slams against the building, that person may fall off. So it's the answer to that is it's consider getting a permanent system so that going forward, your system is designed and certified for the appropriate use. Okay, the next question that's on there is, can you please go into more detail of the recommended records that should be kept for ongoing use of building facade access systems? Good question. Every single time someone goes to your roof, you should have them sign off. It's important to know the people who are exposed to hazards on the building. And not just that they've gone up to the roof or to the facade access platform, but also that they've signed off to get off from those areas as well. You want to have a documented log that people who expose themselves to hazards are authorized to do so. So that's one record as a building owner. Another one is the certification documents. Make sure that the certification documents are kept in the logbook that can be provided to contractors if requested. Any contractor going to your building should request that logbook if they are appropriately safety minded. And if they don't, you should probably ask yourself a question. So maintain logs of the certifications as well, whether it's a visual certification or a load test. Also, another key item for records is request documentation that the contractors, that their workers are properly trained for use of the systems, both in general for OSHA regs, but also specifically that they reviewed the written procedures manual and that they agree that they understand how it is to be used. So we have like a template form that we give to owners to have them sign off on to make sure that they're covered and that they've done their due diligence as well. Can you elaborate a bit on the inspection and certification and what's involved in the process? Sure. Annually, a qualified person, typically an engineer, should go out to the building and visually review the hardware, whether it's tiebacks, davits, BMUs, anything else, to understand and document, is there corrosion? Is there section loss? Do we have water that's gotten past the roofing membrane and could potentially damage the systems? Are the sealants in good shape? Are those failing? And do we need to have potential concern that water has gotten past the sealants? Are any of the hardware components broken, and should they be temporarily placed offline and replaced or repaired? So those visual inspections essentially help to ensure that the systems ongoing are suitable for use, and those should be done on an annual basis. Not to exceed 10 years is when you do the more comprehensive inspection. It goes past visual, and that oftentimes involves some degree of load testing of your tiebacks or your davits. If you have horizontal lifelines, you may do some tension pulls on the switches to verify that the hardware is in still working condition, and also that it still meets the load requirements that it was originally designed for. And then at the end of those, whoever's performing those inspections, whether it's annual or more comprehensive, should issue a certificate of compliance. And that certificate of compliance should specify the specific items that were reviewed, where they're located, and are there any concerns? Do any of those need to be placed offline? And also what date the next inspection should take place. So next question is, I keep hearing that 5 to 10 year pool test. Is 10 years the minimum and 5 years recommended? So to clarify that point, 10 years is the maximum set by OSHA. However, OSHA defers to the designer of record if they require a more frequent, comprehensive load test. And so a lot of designers say that you need to load test your systems every 5 years. And so if the designer says 5 years, those 5 years trump the 10 years set by OSHA, but 10 years is the maximum. Similar to the question above about inspection and certification, municipalities, building departments responsible for policy and safety and access condition. In New York City, exterior appearances are subject to inspection every 5 years, but only for stability. I do not think OSHA regs are the compliance goal. So I'm wondering which authority carries the stick and issues violations. The answer to that is there are oftentimes state entities that have compliance requirements. For example, I know that New York has it, California has OSHA. At the very minimum, those state entities should meet federal OSHA requirements, but oftentimes they go above and beyond that. And if whichever one is the strictest, those have to be followed. In terms of who's responsible for posting it, really both the federal and the state entities can police the safety requirements. And that's why if you get a qualified person to review the systems, you should ensure that they are first not only federal requirements, but also the state requirements as well. This question is, you mentioned annual inspections for building facade anchors. How often should permanently installed roof-mounted building maintenance units be certified? So that's a bit different than your typical tiebacks and davits. If you have a roof-mounted BMU system or building maintenance unit system, those should be inspected either monthly or at the start of each maintenance cycle, whichever is most stringent. And those systems also oftentimes have more specific training requirements for users, and that should also be followed as well. Does WaterPimo perform qualified persons inspections and certification of existing facade access systems? The answer is yes, we do so. And this is, we have WaterPimo, we have a facade access and maintenance service offering that we offer both for new construction, but as well as for existing buildings as well. And as part of that service, we do certifications and inspections of these systems. Everyone, thank you for your time today. I know that we all have very busy schedules, and I appreciate you all chiming in and taking a moment to listen to our MooreChat session today. We do have an upcoming MooreChat session. I think Niku or Faith, do you want to chime in real quick as to when the next session will be?
Excuse me. We will be back here in 2 weeks exactly. So 2 Wednesdays from now, jump on back in. We have a couple more topics coming up this summer. Let's see. Our next event is, sorry, I'm looking at my list now. 6/16, Hakeem is going to be covering thermal loading. So Hakeem, are you ready? Probably not yet, but we'll be there.
Yep. And I believe on June 30th, we have the Dallas Hall of State that will be given by Jeff Kobus. And that's a really fascinating project. And then on July 14th, we're going to discuss the all-important topic of concrete cracks. As contractors say, concrete does crack.
Yeah, we have a great summer ahead, but we're just every 2 weeks, every Wednesday, every 2 weeks. So we will see y'all again here soon. Thank you so much for coming.
All right. Thank you. Looking forward to you on June 16th.